Bon Secours. Catskill. Absent. Good Sam. Hudson Valley.
Here.
Health Alliance. Northern Duchess. Dr. Wilson.
Yes.
Here.
Hi, sorry.
Awesome. Nyack. ORMC. Putnam. St. Anthony's.
Here.
Mid Hudson.
Who said here? Oh, sorry.
Here. St. Luke's. Sharon Hospital. Vassar. Westchester. And Westchester REMAC.
You have to verbalize for me, guys. This doesn't really
I am
work
present.
that
Present.
well. Thank you.
All right. Everybody got a chance to review the minutes. They were sent online. So, old business, the BLS protocols. There was a discussion and changes made at the CMAC a few weeks ago. Do you want
So
to?
the BLS collaborative group has been meeting. The most substantive changes are with pediatrics. EMSC did review the protocols.
You gotta slow down for me, Dr. Weaver. I
EMSC
cannot keep up with you today. Yeah?
Read their recommendations. Those have been incorporated by the working group. They were presented at CMAC as a first introductory reading with the plan to vote in the fall so that people can review them over the summer. It's open comment period now. You can submit your comments to any member of the collaborative working group for your region for a reading and voting at the September CMAC Central meeting.
And so there aren't many substantive, they're more procedural changes?
A lot of it is procedural cleaning up the definition of pediatric patient, that kind of stuff. There's not many significant medical changes. Most notably is stroke. There's a note there about following your local protocol regarding, diverting to a comprehensive stroke center, recognizing that a lot of regions are now looking at this.
Yeah, are they leaving that up to the regions?
At the
Is
moment.
that
At the moment.
the game plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Which is something that we'll, I guess, talk about later. AEMT level of care. Mike, do you want to?
Certainly. So the protocol committee has looked at this over the last several months, and I believe you all should have received an email late last week from Karen. I'll just take a minute to summarize what that is in the event that you did not get a chance to look at that. So as we move forward, the protocol committee does recommend the adoption of advanced emergency medical technician level in the Hudson Valley, both as a standalone program, but also as a supplement for those agencies that are already operating at the paramedic level. The providers would be required to sit for protocol exams similar to that for paramedic, which would include 5 modules and 100 questions. ACLS would not be required to operate at this level, however, certainly is always encouraged. PALS would not be required to operate at this level, but also is certainly encouraged. We developed a list of minimum equipment which must be carried by the agency in its ambulances and EASVs. There's a slight modification that I'll talk to you about later on in the presentation with regards to that based on a comment that we received. There would be a requirement for 2-tier dispatch of paramedic units for calls that meet the EMD criteria. Advanced EMTs can cancel a paramedic unit once a comprehensive documented assessment has been completed and a higher level of care was determined not to be needed. All cancellations, of course, must be appropriately documented. All AEMT level agencies will be required to have the following approved BLS adjuncts: AED, glucometry, albuterol, Narcan, epinephrine, pen and/or injectable, CPAP, and may be required to have the ability to acquire and transmit 12 lead EKG
12 lead?
12 lead EKG as the HVREMAC deems necessary based on location and available destinations. So that would be an additional option. All AEMT level agencies will be required to carry pulse oximetry, need to have a QI program in place. Agency needs to have REMSCO credentialed medical control physician as their medical director. And for agencies desiring to upgrade to advanced emergency medical technician, must complete an ALS upgrade application and must provide the level of care 24/7. The comments that we did receive early on, since the document was released, was there was in the equipment list a note for pleural decompression needles. That was discussed last week or 2 weeks ago at this point, I guess, in Albany. But there's some discussion that should be a regional and agency option, and that the agency is required to do the training for that, since it's not in the scope of practice. And so the agency must do the training. And then there was a discussion with regards to changing the list of equipment from that of a minimum required equipment to that of recommended minimum equipment, and possibly also adjusting some of the numbers. For instance, in some of the cases, there are 2 laryngoscope blades rather than just 1. So at this point, certainly, I'll turn it back over to the chair for discussion, but we've talked extensively about this stuff and feel that with the changing in the landscape, this may be a beneficial program. With critical cares now being eliminated at the state, this may fill a nice void in the region, and certainly would like to see it move forward.
And we had voted on allowing it to move forward previously, so now do we just have to vote on the program as written?
I would say that would be appropriate.
Just to comment on the needle decompression, so at the CMAC meeting, it was if appropriately trained, equipped, and authorized by the region. The intent of it was to allow practical environment EMTs, AMTs to do needle decompression in specific circumstances where it fits the need of the agency and the region that group it. So while it shouldn't be on the minimum equipment list, we shouldn't totally eliminate it because there may be instances where it's appropriate.
The other area, I mean, it's the only indication, as I thought it was discussed, was for traumatic cardiac arrest.
That's true.
So,
Right, exactly.
by all means, I don't think you're going to hurt anybody. Does anybody have any questions about it? Does everybody feel sufficiently informed to make a vote? All right.
So just change the word required to recommended with the equipment list, and the provision then for the plural, change for the pleural decompression.
And then will we leave the numbers on the list? It's up to you guys to decide on?
We'll reevaluate
I
that.
don't think we need to vote on a specific
Absolutely,
number.
we'll relook at that, make sure that it's reasonable. I think that's what is expected here, is reasonable expectation.
Mike Murphy, I think we use the term recommended, and then we allow the agency to determine based on utilization, demographics, logistics, et cetera, what, their equipment deployment so that they can satisfactorily take care of the patient population. I think that would be suffice rather than saying, well, I need 2 of these, 3 of these, 3,
Yeah.
Then, we're going to have to put a trailer behind some of these EASBs just to carry the equipment. So it might just be wise that we leave it as recommended and agency specific.
Yeah, I think that's what we're all leaning towards. Okay. We have a motion?
I'll move that we approve as presented.
All right. A vote? Wait a second. And a vote?
I'm sorry, who seconded? You got to verbalize
Craig.
for me.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yep.
I think it is a roll call.
All right.
We got Dr. Wilson, aye. All aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's unanimous. All right. It's approved. Moving along. Mission Lifeline STEMI protocol. think we have Dr. Yen from Vassar wanted to discuss the Mission Lifeline.
Thanks for reminding me, David.
I'm sorry, Dr. Yan, spell your last name for me.
Y-E-N. How many of you all know about Mission Lifeline? Just want to show of hands, because some of this will be reviewed, some that might not be. I actually knew nothing about it about a year and a half ago or so, but the Heart Association actually is trying to really improve. This works good.
Want to come closer?
Yeah. All right, so basically we started this program about a year and a half ago with basically a general meeting among the hospitals, and then started implementation about second quarter of last year. And it's just a kind of a review about what we're trying to aim now towards STMI and what we're aiming for in improvement. Because I think we've reached a level at which once the patient gets to a revascularization center,
I'm sorry, a what?
a revascularization center, how improvements we can do once we get there. So I think we're focusing more on getting the patient quicker to a revascularization center. So this is the Mission Lifeline overview. Really looking at the goals of where delays occur, trying to get EMS to get to patients quicker, let patients recognize their symptoms quicker. Then we're trying to look at delays between telegraphing the EKG to the respective ER, and then subsequent activation of the lab. And then subsequently trying to figure out a good triage plan if you're at a center where you can't get a patient to a revascularization center within 120 minutes to get lytics within 30 minutes.
You gotta slow down for me, Dr. Yan.
Sorry.
Well, if you can't get a patient to a what?
To a revascularization center within 120 minutes, then you can give lytics within 30 minutes is the goal. So those are kind of the goals that we set there. So our goal is actually to get from EMS first contact to balloon within 90 minutes, which is actually a pretty lofty goal if you think about it. A lot of times we've been very happy in our revascularization centers of getting a balloon open within 90 minutes of the patient getting to our ER. But actually, if we go backtrack, the first medical contact, it's actually pretty difficult sometimes to get the time frame unless you're in a more of a city dwelling where the transfer times aren't not that long. Self-transport, if someone basically comes into the ER, we're trying to get it within 90 minutes. And then if you're at a center that doesn't have revascularization, we like to transfer and get it open within 120 minutes if possible. So that's the whole kind of concept of Mission Lifeline overview. So this is kind of what we engaged in. We would like to try to get possible activation of cath labs from the field, and looking bypass the emergency room as appropriate. And then also from transfer hospitals, we try to meet with them and try to improve streamline communication between the hospitals. And I think the big problem is to reduce the time in the ED, the time in, time out for patients that are transferred to centers that don't have revascularization. The time frame of that can sometimes be pretty prolonged as you look at our data, and we want to try to improve that if possible. And also with walking patients, which is difficult, sometimes with the urgent carers and sometimes primary care doctors' offices, walking patients can be very difficult as well. We try to recognize those atypical presentations and try to get an EKG within 10 minutes in those centers if possible. So we're going to focus here more on the engaging EMS and transfer time in, time out. So this is kind of the Mission Lifeline when it started. It started in 2007, and basically it was started because they recognized that there was really the mortality reduction in SCMO was really plateauing, and they're trying to figure out if there was any way that they could improve care with these systems. So basically they wanted to kind of get it along with the guidelines to track both hospital and regional STMI quality improvement programs.
Okay, too fast. Track
Sorry.
both hospital, regional, and what?
Improvement protocols. Slightly deposition.
That's exactly what this is like.
And basically focus on acutely admitted acute MI patients. So this was the project plan, and we're kind of in phase 2 to 3 right now, but initially what they did is they met with the revascularization centers in the Hudson Valley, and this was Mission Lifeline. They established a steering committee, which I'm a member of, and then basically looked at our baseline data just to kind of see if there were enough patient population, cases, etc., for them to enroll the hospital and or referring center into the project. We had our project kickoff meeting, I believe, about a year ago at West Point, and then we started our conference calls and reviewed the data monthly after that. And we're now trying to develop regional protocols, so we're kind of here in the phase 2 to phase 3 range now, where we're meeting with hospitals, meeting with ERs, trying to establish a protocol in which people can follow that hopefully will make it easier for us to get these patients quicker to a revascularization center. Phase 3 is basically looking at the data, trying to implement feedback and target meetings for the non-PCI centers in EMS. We've had some difficulty getting participation with the non-PCI centers, and I think we sent a survey out to EMS before in the past to try to get some idea of what their problems have been with logistics of getting EKGs transmitted, cold spots where there's no good cellular service, etc. So these are really our goals, like I discussed before. Our goal is 75% of cases within 90 minutes to patients who, from first medical contact to primary PCI, or door to needle time less than 30 minutes for those who receive lysis. For transfers, if you get to a different hospital that doesn't have revascularization, our goal is within 120 minutes, first medical contact to transfers. Walk-in patients, we have a goal of an EKG within 10 minutes. And number 4, I think, which we don't do very well, is feedback to EMS and referral centers. I think a lot of you all do a lot of hard work and don't get feedback from us. When we do get cases of how well we did and what we can improve, usually it's only in cases where there were delays. So I think number 4 is important, and we don't do a good enough job with that. This is just an example of kind of the data that can be given. If you look here, these are in purple is the first medical contact to EKG. So we're tracking times in which the EMS arrives, how quickly they're getting EKG, and then in blue, EKG to notification call to the ER, and then subsequently red is a call to activation. So we can kind of track these time frames and try to see how we're doing and look at ways in which we can improve things. This is kind of the baseline data we get for patients who actually get to the facility, to device time. This is transfers times. So if you look at blue, it's basically patients who arrive at the door to the first facility. The orange is kind of door in, door out. And then the green is once they get to the revascularization center at the time to balloon. So we can look at that data as well. And those are national benchmarks and our goal in blue and red respectively. So in our region, we have approximately, I believe, 5 or 6 revascularization centers. The ones in black are referral centers. There's obviously a lot more down in New York City. So this is kind of the area that we're encompassing here. And we have, I believe, 5 revascularization centers now in the Hudson Valley that are part of Mission Lifeline. And does this work, or why are we doing this? So they did various studies prior. This is in Hartford. And they basically showed a reduction of about 13 minutes in patients taken directly to the PCI center. And you can see that majority of the reduction in time was the ED time, actually, from 31 minutes to 18 minutes. It's kind of hard to improve the cath lab time. And the first medical contact to the ED door was about the same.
I'm sorry, I lost you. The first what?
First medical contact to ED door time was about the same. And on the other panel, they improved about 30 minutes or so, roughly, of transfer patients taken to a non-PCI center. And the biggest improvement was in the door in, door out time. And that's typically what we want to target to here in non-referral centers, non-revascularization centers, the door in, door out time, because I think there could be some improvement there. If you look nationally, this is presented last year at AHA. It was published in Circulation, and they basically took Mission Lifeline and implemented it in about 10 regional centers. And basically they're trying to determine does this actually improve outcomes or not. It's a big trial. It's 12 metropolitan regions, about 21,000 STMI patients, 10,000 patients presented from EMS to PCI. So we're just looking at the PCI patients, not the ones that got lytics. It was led by the Duke Clinical Institute, and 139 PSAT hospitals, 970 or so EMS agencies, 12 big metropolitan regions. Albany was one of them, New York City, Houston, Hartford, Denver, you can read it here, Portland. So it was kind of a amalgamation of a lot of different regions. And really, if you look at the regions, there was actually quite a spread of QMI outcomes. You know, you have the Northeast, which does pretty well, and the South, sometimes not as well, Midwest, West Coast, they do pretty well, and Southwest. So what they found was basically once they took their baseline data and then implemented the Mission Lifeline protocol, and basically determined that there was a significant reduction in the first medical contact for lab activation by about roughly, what, 14%, 15% or so in the green there, pretty much across the board, which was a good thing. If they looked at emergent department dwell time for transfers, they also showed a significant reduction across the board, with most of the patients getting out of there within 20 minutes or so. Majority is still about 33%, greater than 30 minutes, but certainly better than 42%. If you looked at the mortality of patients who received first medical contact to cath lab, less than 20 minutes, they did better than those greater than 20 minutes. That kind of makes sense, about 6,000 patients or so. And you look at the outcomes, there wasn't any major difference between bleeding, stroke, or cardiogenic shock patients. In-hospital death, though, was decreased from 4.4% to 2.3%, and heart failure was
I'm sorry,
also...
give me the numbers again, Dr. Yan.
In-hospital death was reduced from 4.4% to 2.3%, and heart failure was decreased from 7.4% to 5%. Those were statistically significant. So if you look at the patients who were, or the centers who were in Accelerator 2, if you track their mortality across the board from 2015 to 2017, we showed a steady decrease in in-hospital mortality for STMIs who got revascularized. And if you looked at the data for patients who were not, or patients who were in regions who did not have, who did not participate in Mission Lifeline, we showed that their mortality pretty much stayed the same, maybe upticked a little bit. So I think this is pretty good data that Mission Lifeline does work. It does lead to clinical outcome data that are important, and if you could implement it, it would be a good thing for our region. So that's basically what they concluded. So I'll give you some of our data here. Just our goals again, just to remind us, greater than 75% of cases within 90 minutes, first medical contact of primary PCI, that's our goal.
Yeah, slow down for me.
Sorry.
What was that last one?
Our goal is greater than 75% of cases
in 90
to
minutes?
Open the artery within 90 minutes from first medical contact to getting the artery open. And these are our region aggregates. These are our hospitals on below, A, B, C, D, and E. So those are the 5 hospitals that have primary PCI. And the numbers for some of the hospitals are small, so we take it with a grain of salt. But in general, in the aggregate, we've shown an improvement, I believe, from about 75%, kind of a dip to 70% on the second quarter, to about 80% on our most recent quarter, getting the artery open within 90 minutes of first medical contact. Some hospitals do better than others. I know Hospital A is very forthcoming. They're in a more city environment, so they recognize that their transfer times are not as long as for some other hospitals that are more rural. This is EKG within 10 minutes of arrival. This is actually with not just urgent care, but across the board. And you'd think that this should be 100% across the board, but in reality, it really isn't. It's about 80%, I believe, in our last quarter that we looked at. Our goal is greater than 75%. And these are transfer times from first facility to those who have revascularization capability. There's only 3 hospitals out of the 5 that receive primary PCI that get transfers currently. Actually 2, sorry. And you can see that it's difficult to get the patients quicker from these facilities. Only about 50% for the last quarter and 75% got within their artery open within 2 hours after arriving at the first center. So last, I'm just going to look at, and you can get these slides from David or from me if you like, kind of the protocols. I think that Alana, who works with Mission Lifeline, has met with some
of the referring centers, and I think our goal is to meet with everyone, if possible, and try to get a kind of a protocol set up where things are relatively straightforward, and there hopefully won't be much decision-making to be made. We follow some algorithms. These are algorithms that we've all seen before, but just to kind of put it in 1 or 2 pages of paper, I think would be important, because we certainly get a lot of calls and sometimes some confusion about what to do, what to give, etc. And I think if we can streamline that, I think that will be improved. And these are just basically medications that we like to use, dosages, etc. Just on a really quick sheet that you can initial off when you gave it, etc. From the receiving end, sometimes it's very difficult for us to determine what the patient actually got at the emergency room, or what time frame it was. We have to flip through a gazillion sheets of paper. So if we had one sheet that had everything on it, that would be great if we could do that. And we're trying, this is one of the reasons why we have this. Plus, it makes it easier for the data collectors to know exactly what happened and when the patient arrived, etc. This is a great transfer form here. I think it's important that if we can fill this out, that would be very good. It just gives us a quick snapshot of when the patient contacted by EMS, when they arrived at your facility, the door in, door out time, etc. And hopefully it's not going to be too laborious to complete, but we certainly could tailor it to your facility if needed. And just upcoming, there's also part of Mission Lifeline is also to raise community awareness. So hopefully we're going to have some just posters or whatnot, billboards, etc. Just trying to get people to call 911 quicker rather than drive themselves to the ER, etc. I'm sure that most of you have cases in which patients just decide to drive themselves and not call 911 and really delay their therapy. And then this is the feedback form. This is an example of one of the feedback forms that we can give your facility and or EMS. I don't think we've done this as well as we could in the past, but certainly for all cases, we certainly want to do this to improve, basically, try to understand from your standpoint, what are the delays or what are the issues that sometimes arise that we can improve upon. And I think we met with Catskill, Northern Dutchess, and Mid-Hudson recently, and the other 5 hospitals there I think they're planning to meet with in the future, just regarding their protocols and any questions, etc. I think that's going to be within the next few weeks, I believe. And these are just some contact names. Alana Davis, who couldn't be here today, she's Director of Mission Lifeline in New York City. That's her contact number. She's very happy to answer any questions and anything you need. And she'll meet either with phone calls or personally with your hospitals to implement these protocols if you're interested. And that's just my information there.
Thanks. So, going forward, I guess they're going to be contacting all the hospitals together, the non-PCI performing hospitals to gather information, get information gathering. And what about the individual EMS agencies, or are they using EMS reports from the hospitals as the information source?
So we've met with some. We have actually we've increased our executive committee to include EMS also. So we're trying to work with EMS providers directly to improve and try to hear from them where the delays can occur, which I think is important because a lot of times we have no idea what they're doing out there and the difficulties they have trying to transmit and get things forward.
There's an opportunity for EMS agencies to receive recognition from Mission Lifeline, right? So if they're doing their first medical contact EKGs within 10 minutes and they're meeting all their metrics for Mission Lifeline, they get bronze, silver, or gold awards for Mission Lifeline as an agency.
Yeah, and anybody...
It's a very active program in the Remo region. Dr. Bailey's done a fantastic job with the program in recognizing EMS, and his programs that he puts out are being tailored to our abilities at Vassar, and to raise awareness with EMS and make sure that they understand the seriousness of these type of calls and possibly diverting past a local facility coming to PCI.
Sure. Makes sense.
So I'm on the steering committee too, and I think the real challenges, and this is, that we found, is figuring out how to get this data back to EMS. Because a couple of things. I mean, one of the things is you won't, as a hospital, get your little gold star if you don't get your data back, because that's the fourth important component here. So we need to figure out, I mean, and it's probably, unfortunately, going to be different from agency to agency, but and because we have so many agencies with different sort of means of communication, is getting that info back to them. So you can see that chart has a lot of time action, but I know for the EMS personnel who's bringing the patient in, what they want to hear really is the narrative. They want to hear, I mean, yeah, the times are great.
This is what the vessel.
But like, what happened to the patient? What happened to the patient, in the ER? What happened to the patient up in the cath lab? How did they turn out? Did they get discharged from the hospital in 4 days? Those kinds of, now, you're not going to be able to know that if you're giving feedback back in 48 hours, but you're going to know something. And that's, kind of what the day-to-day EMS folks want to know. And that's what's going to inspire them to try to jump on board with this thing. It's like, okay, we made a real difference in people's lives here, and we got some feedback. We actually found out what happened to that person. And that's why we're going to do everything we can to compress times and do all those kinds of things, or rapid transfer times from hospitals. So that, to me, has been the biggest challenge, is trying to figure that out.
Dr. Larson, thank you for your input. We have at Vassar and HealthQuest, we're working on a program to bring that ability to every call, not just STEMI, not just stroke, through a vendor program that we're able to send feedback out to the EMS provider as soon as the clinical information has been posted by ED or the cath lab or neuro, and that project is well in hand to be launched in 2019, as long as some of the hurdles are taken care of. I can see 100% compliance with all STEMI, neuro, and trauma, as well as pediatrics. And hopefully about 95% of all calls.
That is the goal. I mean, the trend is to give more information and feedback back to the unit so they can learn and improve.
This really, this is an outstanding program, really, and I think this really raises the bar, first of all, with STEMIs, but stroke is right behind it, right, knocking it right on its door. We've really done this with trauma for the last 10 or 15 years. And I think this is a natural segue into that. I think what's important in the message, I think that Dr. Yen has delivered here today, is that hospitals and EMS agencies need to be aware that the program is out there, and there are benchmarks that we should all try to reach. There are several hurdles, especially in EMS, but we need to spread the word and encourage our participating agencies to buy into this program, because it does make a difference.
One of the things, sort of related more to the inter-facility transports, which I know we don't really cover in the realm of commercial transports, but it's just the non-PCA hospitals just recognizing that they need to call the ambulance as soon as they see the EKG, rather than waiting until they speak to the transfer center, because I think that's the biggest decrease in time that you get, bang for your buck wise.
Just two comments. One, the sharing of information always makes a difference. And typically that doesn't occur even within systems. We do get it back some for the room intervention. We don't get it back for trauma. We don't get it for some of the cardiac cases as well too. And I'm talking about the sending facilities. I'm also talking about EMS. And so oftentimes even, what happened to that patient?
Yeah,
well,
we don't know.
And so to the extent that we can get any of that information, just very basic, it is being done some, but not as much as it needs to. The second point, which is actually more operational, is is that we will not get ambulances. We can pick up the EKG in some of these outlying hospitals, diagnose this thing. We can diagnose it even before they get to the ED. And if they're brought to a non-PCI facility, that creates a real problem. And we're looking at transport times sometimes of 1, 2, 3 hours. And they can be flight or cannot be flight. So then oftentimes we're giving lytics when really the optimal treatment is PCI for these patients, or this from cardiac. So I just want to make sure on the record that that's an issue. And again, we don't influence your facility, your jurisdiction, but to allow that to happen, I think we need to be aware of that. That occurs for trauma as well.
One of the things that probably could improve that more than anything else is, bringing the message back to the REMSCO about our just BLS 12 lead programs, because we don't have enough BLS agencies doing 12 leads. And if they were, it would be a quick solution.
Speaking to Dr. Van Roken's first point about EMS and data, and Dr. Larson's and everyone's as well, having worked in trying to get feedback from hospitals to EMS providers through this electronic means for probably 7 years now. A lot of the hospitals want to do this. I should say that most of the personnel in the hospitals want to do this, but there are some difficulties within the hospital that admins and medical directors and such will face. One of those being, are we able to get this data out? It's a liability, we don't want to do it, there's HIPAA, there's this, there's that. In a lot of progressive systems, this is working really well. To this point, would it behoove any of the hospitals here to have a statement from the HVREMAC that says this organization completely advocates for the sharing of data among interfacility hospitals and among EMS, that it is relevant, part of QA/QI, it's in CFR, Public Health Law, General Municipal Law regulations, and hospital shortages?
I think that the HIPAA issue is misinterpreted by a lot of people. It's clearly an article, very clearly in the law that feedback to EMS is included, but it might be worth a letter from the HVREMAC, or perhaps even the CMAC, to the Dear CEO letter the commissioner sends to say, please be advised. Not only is it encouraged, you are required to share this information.
Yeah, in support of that, it's Article 30, and I think it's 40519 of the hospital code, and joint commission.
In my individual efforts, that would be a very assistive letter.
Anybody have a motion? We could make a vote to send this out.
So I know that Dr. Papish has drafted a letter.
I'm glad to, but for the benefit of my hospital, it should probably come from them. They're going to look at me and say, wow. Yeah.
Quoting the relevant section.
Right. Yeah. Right. Second?
Second.
Vote?
Aye.
Unanimous? All right. Good. We will do that. Next. Service upgrades.
Okay. Go ahead.
Service upgrades?
We have a few. For Narcan, we have Kent Fire, Brewster, Stony Point, Village of Montgomery PD, City of Kingston PD, Walden PD, and Tuxedo. For CPAP, we have Brewster, Plattekill, Unionvale, Livingston Manor, and Woodburn. For glucometry, we have Stony Point, Gardner, Woodburn. For public access defibrillation, we have Town of Wallkill, the Zen Mountain Monastery. And for BLS 12 lead, we have Unionvale, Plattekill, and Woodburn.
BLS what? 12?
BLS 12 lead.
And who?
Unionvale, Plattekill, Woodburn.
So they have to be voted.
They have to be voted on?
Yeah, we can do them all together.
I move that they all be approved as presented, assuming their paperwork is in
It is, and it is complete.
I move we approve them all.
Second? Vote?
I'm sorry, who was the second? You gotta talk for me, loud, because you're right behind the camera.
It's unanimous.
Now, do those get added to the website?
No.
Would that not be beneficial, that we add, yeah, those that are doing the adjuncts, would that not be appropriate so that we can share that information and others see that there are others doing it?
Could have a shaming list next to
I think
it.
that's great that there are several of those that are now taking on those adjuncts, and I think it would be good for others to see that they're out there doing it.
We can publish that.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, I like the idea of putting it on the website.
That's what I mean, putting it on the website.
Yeah. Okay.
He stopped, so this might be him calling back.
Evaluation Subcommittee report. Do you have anything?
It stopped. He
We
was
don't
disconnected.
have any cases to review, but I can take 30 seconds of your time in regards to getting information back to EMS. I think one of the fundamental philosophies in high-quality care is an interdisciplinary approach. So along those lines, we hope to have a collaborative conference, EMS, ED, ICU, and we're calling it Resuscitation Conference. So targeted primarily towards emergency physicians, EMS personnel, and intensivists. We would love if you all could grab a flyer or two and post them in your departments and inside your physicians, your local squads, and please share. It's going to be September 13th.
Great. All right, helicopter committee report. We don't have Dr. Berkowitz. There's no report.
There's no report, there hasn't been a meeting.
There was an RTAC meeting.
There was an RTAC meeting, I can talk about that. Basically, there were two things. Again, ongoing discussion about making sure oxygen is provided in TBI and traumatic brain injury patients, TBI patients, and or even people whom you have the slightest suspicion that there might be a TBI. Okay, so again, there was a review of that data and from the study from Arizona. And there was also a discussion along the lines of getting EMS more involved in the RTAC, that we were going to start going back to case presentations. So we were going to try to pick high quality intense trauma cases, and actually make sure that the EMS agencies were informed that this particular trauma case was going to be discussed, and have them a part of that, so that, again, to bring more involvement and highlight certain issues in trauma. So that was really the two.
Would that be CME and call audit credit?
Yes, there's definitely, that will be part of it. So to encourage not only the agency involved in that particular call, but anyone who wants to come, they can get credit for it.
It's a way to post those dates when.
What's that?
Posted dates.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to get them to do a yearly schedule like they used to, but they're kind of going from each one to the next one.
Yeah.
So, and there's been some turnover in personnel from the medical center, so hopefully it will, continue on. But I think that they're going to try to make it so they post it for the whole year, for 4 meetings per year.
Right now, the next meeting is scheduled for September 14th at Westchester Medical Center.
QI?
Okay. As of tomorrow morning at 9:30, New York State will be turning on the NEMSIS 3.4.0 bridge. They're going to start by moving over all the image trend clients, 1 or 2 agencies at a time, starting with the North Country, just to make sure that everything works the way it's supposed to. We spent the last couple of months going over not just the NEMSIS rules, but the New York State Data Dictionary that was published about a year ago. as well as implementing some of our own local rules. We have 2 agencies on our regional elite bridge that we've been testing these on, just to make sure that everything is functional. NEMS 3.4 really does include a tremendous amount of data points, going from NEMS 2, which has hundreds, to NEMS 3.4, which has thousands. We should be able to glean some really good data from that. The more agencies that we have on EPCR, the better our data set will be locally. So we really need to do something more to push the rest of these agencies to move towards electronic.
Protocol committee. Anything else? All right, new business. So we sent out, the Cardizem went out, right?
Yes.
So we sent out the REMAC advisory about the Cardizem shortage. As everybody knows, it's the latest shortage, and using metoprolol as an alternative would be sufficient in the interim until agencies can get more Cardizem. And the other REMAC advisory we sent out was actually sort of old business, because we had a discussion a couple meetings ago that stemmed out of Orange County regarding psychiatric patients and destinations in which some agencies were experiencing problems in which they were being mandated to divert to a much farther away psychiatric center in favor of instead of going to a local hospital. And so that advisory went out as well.
We do have some other shortages that we see coming up on the horizon there with morphine and fentanyl. I don't know if there's anything that we need to address at this point, but I think we should probably at least be aware of it. And
I think what we discussed at the protocol committee is that we defer to the collaborative group and have them issue them in the event that approvals are required. And so if no one objects to that, we'll just follow up with the collaborative group.
Sounds good. I don't think that's anything we need to vote on. And then CMAC, you kind of gave a synopsis of the BLS.
The EMSC has been funded for an additional 4 years, so they'll be around for at least another 4 years. The new Bureau Director, Brian Greenberg, introduced himself at both meetings. He asked, and he extends this invitation to all agencies across the state, that you let him know what you could change one thing about EMS, what your one wish would be for EMS in New York State. And he said, feel free to email him, share that with your regional rep, but he's actively collecting this information across the state now to really try and understand what people think are the highest priority issues for the state.
I think he's planning on doing the rounds of all the various agencies and REMACs and REMSCOs throughout the state. So he's going to be probably at some point coming to one of our meetings. CMAC, PAD, EpiPen, albuterol, glucometer, Narcan.
We did that.
Just did it. Open forum. Any?
A couple, if possible. At the last meeting, we talked about the regional report for NIST and a pre-hospital reporting procedure. We all sort of like it, but we don't want.
Yes.
That's just a note on that. Westchester REMAC has gone ahead and we have approved that too. So we actually have had a vote and approved the using of the NIST form. Now, educating and getting people to actually do it. Is it different?
Yeah.
Also, the RTAC was also on board with this, and they voted to, as soon as we say yes to that we have approved it, that they will start working on from their end on implementing it.
And we should provide that information to the collaborative group too, because that's not what's actually in the collaborative, the proposed changes. So I think they have contest the baton or something, different mnemonic in there. We may want to suggest that they consider NIST or include it for the collaborative.
Is everybody familiar with NIST from prior meetings, standardized report?
One more point on that. Anyone who's going to get the triage system, this should be incorporated into the triage system. So the
Triage is aware of it, and their IT department is working.
And they're very happy to
Yeah.
make changes as we want.
That's easy.
So we should shoot that in there.
So, do we have a motion to, wanna make a motion?
I can.
Make a motion to adopt the regional EMS radio report as the standardized format for pre-hospital communication to the hospitals. Do I get a second?
I'd like to second that motion.
And a vote?
That was very good. You should encourage them.
Very good.
All yay? It's unanimous. Yep.
Just a report from, since we weren't officially listed in the agenda, a report from the Westchester. So, a couple things. We are establishing a tag to talk about RSI single provider. There's at least down by us, it's a two-provider, two-paramedic thing.
It is here too.
And there's been pretty extensive discussion, there's national literature on it, that it can be done successfully and safely with one provider. So, you know, right now it's kind of a agency-based skill in some ways, and we're thinking about developing it so more it's a provider-based skill that you carry with you. You know, and if the agency is an agency that does RSI, then you bring that in and you are capable of doing single provider. So anyway, we're doing a tag on it. We'll bring those results hopefully by September, the September meeting. So that's one issue that's out there. We're also doing a tag on timely PCR transmission. So along the lines of the electronic, now pretty much everyone in the Westchester area is doing electronic PCR, but the problem is they're still not getting to the hospitals in a timely manner, okay, or at all, okay, so that's a huge issue. So it's not showing up in the patient's record, it's not being a part of the emergency department's decision on how to handle the patient and that kind of stuff. I mean, at our hospital, White Plains Hospital, we try to program very moderate success, I would, at the most, and that is that we're actually having the ED physicians sign off on the PCR. And timely, just like when they get handed a EKG, they've got to put their name and time on it. So we're trying to do that, but we are trying to, area-wide in Westchester, figure out how to get these things in timely and get them as part of the record. So that's another tag. We have a third tag that we're talking about, TXA. So I don't know if people want to talk about TXA here, but a lot of folks are certainly the military experience and TCC courses are all pushing TXA in trauma, and it seems to be fairly good data there that TXA helps. Now, also, you know, this is a discussion that's going to go on in the RTAC. I know there's some controversy in the RTAC, and there's certainly some trauma surgeons that have questions about TXA. But anyway, we decided we would convene a tag about that, so we'd be very interested in any discussions here about TXA. And then finally, I think for final approval on our June 18th meeting is, and I'm not sure why this is still an open issue, but the question of approval that any call audit in Westchester is good for Hudson Valley. So I think that's been...
We endorsed that.
I don't think we ever officially approved it in Westchester for some reason.
Are you saying Westchester doesn't accept Hudson Valley call audits, or vice versa?
You know, it's just like people are still presenting 2 sheets and all this kind of stuff, and they shouldn't have to bother with all that garbage. So we're trying to eliminate that.
Sharon Fisher from Hudson. So are you saying that if Hudson Valley is qualified, we can submit our Hudson Valley form to Westchester?
You bet.
To give the Westchester provider?
Correct.
Okay.
I think we've been doing that.
Well,
Like a lot of places have been doing
Yeah,
that.
people have been doing both, so it's
Yeah.
just like, hey,
Isn't the same thing in place for Remo? Well, Remo's accepts on
We are doing the same thing with Remo. So we have adopted a uniform form that has both Remo and Hudson Valley HVREMAC numbers because they can be different. So they put that on a singular form and it's sent to both agencies.
I mean, it seems that anyone who is practicing under the collaborative protocols
Right, doesn't say how much
should
general
be,
collaborative
it should be
Exactly.
all 13 or how many regions.
Right.
But all the regions have different, you know, whether something's call audit credit versus CME, blah, blah, blah.
Right, but you should be able to submit a single form
Yeah.
across the collaborative that each region can credit it as they credit their stuff. But
Maybe that would be another thing to suggest to the collaborative
Yeah.
protocol, since everybody's
Yeah.
using the same protocols.
I have two things.
Dave was,
Yeah, okay.
he had one other.
Yeah, I have one other thing. We talked about this a little bit in the protocol committee and had a number of agencies actually request this, that we expand the use of nitrous oxide from adults to pediatric patients. It's been done in dentistry since about the 1700s. And so we thought we'd be a little kind of progressive with this a bit. You know, in the area where we're sort of having potential alternatives to narcotics, because morphine is going out in the summer, fentanyl out in the fall, those kinds of issues, this might be a good time to say, hey, let's be able to use nitrous for pediatric patients. We sort of deliberated, do we use an age or do we use, you know, where we go with there? We came up with the idea of old enough to have the ability to comprehend, follow directions, and self-administer, which is just about the same for adults, actually. Adults can't do negative heat math. They shouldn't be getting it either. The contraindications would be the same: suspected bowel obstruction, pneumothorax, and inability to self-administer. We've got a high incidence of isolated pediatric trauma that this will work very well for instead of administering an opiate. And so we want to pass this through the HVREMAC first, and then also potentially make it a change to the collaborative.
So I actually had a conversation with Bailey regarding this specific issue. Okay. It was never the intent of the collaborative to exclude pediatric patients when that protocol was written. It was just written in that way, and most of the collaborative physicians, when we've talked about it, feel it's perfectly appropriate for peds. It was just, the protocol was never written that way, more of an oversight than intent to exclude peds.
Okay. Is it possible that I don't know if this is possible, to have the HVREMAC authorize the use in the Hudson Valley region and for pediatric patients under the same auspices, and then bring this to the collaborative group for a change?
So it's a protocol change, so we have to go to CMAC if HVREMAC approves it.
So it might be best to get this body at this point to approve it, and then go to the collaborative for the revisions in the fall. Now would be a good time to get it in that rewrite, if this body would approve it now.
We couldn't use an advisory also, or no?
I don't think, I mean, you can't, it's a change of,
I think
But-
that represents a great opportunity for us to educate ourselves more on the use of nitrous oxide. I think it's an excellent modality that's, again, non-opiate for the control of pain. But even though there are a whole bunch of emergency physicians sitting at this table, I don't think nitrous oxide is part of all of our daily practices. So I think it certainly represents an opportunity to further educate not only this body, but to develop training protocols for agencies that are using it for adult populations, and to continue growing the awareness, application, and number of agencies that are carrying it on the formulary.
Excuse me, a lot of the equipment has not been completely available until more recently. And so I'm very happy to sit on a group to do that, to help agencies also write their policies that they would need to write for the use of EMS.
So, quick poll, does anyone in this room use it in their emergency department, or have it available?
Exactly.
Right, why not?
It's more cost and logistics.
Well,
Logistics.
Do you have is there a draft protocol we could, or
It's
just
in the
adding it to the
protocols right
just
now.
adding it to the adult protocol and
It's-
expanding the age?
It's in the adult.
Yeah, but that's what I
currently,
mean.
Collaboratively. It is not in pediatric. And so that's where we want to move it, as we've indicated.
And Dave, how many uses of nitrous oxide does Arlington have, for example, in the last 365 days? And do you have indications of fall types or injury patterns?
So that was Daley's comment too, is that we don't have a ton of data on its use.
So when we actually went to the collaborative protocol, in essence, it was out of the protocol. And we worked with Pam and Dr. Dale to put it in, and Arlington, Shandaken, New Windsor, and Ellensville did a study of the efficacy of nitrous oxide in the pre-hospital environment. We pulled all of our data together, did a report. I'm happy to send that out to this group. We gave that to Dr. Daly. He said, okay, sounds great, and put it in. We did a follow-up study on nitrous oxide in the ambulances and things that we would need to change environmentally in appropriate use. I can send that out as well for this group to help in that decision. So those agencies use it for Arlington, to answer the question. We have probably 2, 3, 4 uses a month. It increases in the summertime for us, orthopedic injuries in places like Shandaken. It increases over the winter time because of the skiing accidents. And so, it is used, and again, it's becoming more available. It's a great tool, especially if you need to use it to stabilize a person, to be able to move them when they actually don't need narcotics in the long term, but in the short term, and or until you're able to get some narcotics on board. It's a good intermediary.
We have a motion? Do we want to push this through? I see. Yeah.
I'm interested in learning a lot more about it. It sounds like a fantastic opportunity. I just, at this point in time, don't have enough hands-on experience to, recommend protocol changes or, patient population that I'm not that familiar with the drug itself and its effects on that patient population.
I would move that we refer to protocol committee for presentation at the next meeting, maybe some more data on, it sounds like people are going to a little more familiarity with how it's used, but so maybe a brief presentation might be helpful.
Sure. When do the changes in for the collaboratives?
Okay, they're hoping to get that approval in September.
It doesn't mean you can't suggest it.
Right,
to the
because they
collaborative now.
because they can
put,
address
yeah,
it. They can address
And then
it.
that would make things even
But
easier.
it's just that this
that,
group
yes.
would like a presentation on it at the next meeting.
But I certainly will let the collaborative know now.
Okay, sure. I'm happy to do that. Absolutely.
Okay. Other new business?
Just as a point of information, the REMSCO approved the expansion of territory for Hatzola of Rockland to include all of Rockland as their primary territory at the last REMSCO meeting this week. What happens from this point on, all the paperwork gets signed from the REMSCO, it's submitted to the state, and then the state will wait 30 days to see if there's any kind of an appeal processed. If it hasn't, then they will issue this certificate for that expansion. The second thing that will be coming here shortly is the Village of New Square Volunteer Ambulance Corps in Rockland County has submitted an application to upgrade to an ALS provider. The application was reviewed and was referred back to the agency for a couple of inconsistencies and a few questions. So hopefully that will be clarified shortly, and then it will be brought here. We will create a tag, and then the tag will review the application, make sure that everything in there makes sense in the way it operates. And then there'll be a public meeting where anybody within the public or within the industry can come and speak about whether or not they should have it and why they should or shouldn't have an ALS upgrade, and then it'll be brought to here as a system upgrade. Probably at the next meeting.
Do you want to talk about the rules?
Yeah, we could do that. We also have a certificate, an expansion of territory for New Windsor Ambulance to cover, to include the as their primary territory, the town of Cornwall. That was also reviewed, sent back to them. They had a bunch of things that had to be corrected, and we just got that back Friday night, so we haven't had a chance to look at it, make sure the correction's in. So the REMSCO will create a tag to look at that, and the Transportation Committee will vote on it and present it to the REMSCO at the, probably at the next REMSCO meeting.
Just a short discussion about shortages. So, I'm not sure what agencies are having shortages here. We actually put out some memos in terms of the use of beta blocker instead of Cardizem, because no one can get Cardizem. And also for those agencies that are doing RSI, people are having trouble getting sucks.
Getting what?
Sucks, so cinephonia. So, now within the formulary, from the collaborative protocols, there's rocuronium is already in there. Rocuronium. Don't ask me.
Common spelling.
I'll look it up. That's okay.
So, there's not a big jump there. It's not like we're having to introduce any kind of new medication. I mean, they are there in the formulary, but they're not the first choice for those two particular problems.
I feel like, didn't we send an advisory like a year or two ago about VEC?
Yep.
The same thing? All right. And we sent out the Cardizem one.
Yep.
There'll be an ongoing problem, obviously. Unless there's some reform as to how they make these. Any other open forum, new business? A motion to adjourn? There we go. Thank you.
God, please somebody.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
All right, so 2 things, I'll get Dr. Yen.